Did somebody say that?
No, I did. You said
YouTube, because I
YouTube, and I'm
said
like, oh
YouTube.
yes, that's right.
Hi, welcome to
Goodness.
Celebrate Recovery at
We
New
just
Heights
started.
Church.
No.
I'm Angela, this is Chad.
We forgot to hit
We
record.
just hit record for the YouTube version. It's all right.
It's all right. We'll figure it out. Anyway, there we go. Well, let's jump into
the 12
our
steps.
12 steps. Let's get it
We'll
going.
read 'em.
So we'll kick that over and get things rolling.
We had people lined up to read all the things.
We were ready.
We really were.
In every
one of our dear leaders,
every sense of the word,
was going to
except
read
for
the 8 principles instead of the 12 steps.
You ready to go? You want me
Here
to do
we
one?
go.
I'll do one.
Okay.
Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over our addiction and compulsive behaviors and that our lives had become unmanageable. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me. That is in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. Romans 7:18.
Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
For it is God who works in you to will and act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Philippians 2:13. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our lives and our wills over to the care of God. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Romans 12:1.
It says as a living sacrifice, and both of us read it as living sacrifices. We just brush right over the a living sacrifice, and we read whatever we want.
Step 4. Oh, this is yours.
We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. Lamentations 3:40.
Step 5. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. James 5:16.
Step 6. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. James 4:10. When you've read it one way for so many years, week in and week out, it's hard when boss just goes and changes the words.
Just going and changing the words. We humbly asked him to remove all our shortcomings. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. 1 John 1:9.
Step 8. We made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all.
Do to others as you would have them do to you. Luke 6:31. Step 9. We made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Luke 6:31.
Step 10. We continued to take a personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it.
So if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. 1 Corinthians 10:12. Step 11. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and power to carry that out. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly. Colossians 3:16.
Step 12. Having had a spiritual experience as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs.
Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you may also be tempted. Galatians 6:1. Good job. I think we did all right with that. That wasn't too bad.
Sometimes we can read.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it's always so hard, but it definitely is every single time.
Well,
this is awesome.
We have kind of a little fun surprise switch up for this week. Obviously, we're going to meet in person, and so we decided because we were going to meet in person, we were going to bring back somebody who's led worship for us before and give her a shot. But then we canceled at the last minute, and so we switched up and decided to go with her anyway. And so instead of switching over to the Crosstown Band, this time we're sending the songs over to Worship by the Bay. That's what we're going to call it.
Worship by the Bay.
Worship by the Bay. Please join us in worship. Remember, if you are celebrating something, this is the celebrate part of Celebrate Recovery. If you have a sobriety date or a surrender date and have a 30, 60, or 90-day chip or time to celebrate, or 6 months or 9 months, or if you have a year or multiple years, we want to celebrate with you. And so during these songs that Bailey is going to sing and play for us to join her in worship, please let us know in the comments what it is that you're celebrating. We'd love to celebrate with you.
For sure. Let's kick it over to Worship by the Bay. Here we go.
Hey there, Forever family. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. Struggle with depression and finding my voice and knowing who I am and surviving this darn global pandemic. And my name is Bailey. So we're going to do some worship today. So if you would do whatever feels good for you right now and worship with us. So here we go. God, you're welcome in this place. You're welcome in this place. You're welcome in this place. God, you're welcome in this place. You're welcome in this place. Have your way. Have your way. Have your way. Have your way. God, have your way, have your way. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, and let all that's within me shout out. Shout out, bless the Lord, oh my soul, and let all that's within me shout out. Shout out, bless the Lord, oh my soul, and let all that's within me shout out. Shout out, bless the Lord, oh my soul, and let all that's within me shout out. Shout out, have your way, God, have your way, have your way. Have your way, God, have your way, have your way. We have come to give you glory. Would you speak them once again? Would you speak them once again? My heart is in my throat. My knees have hit the floor. Still I call to mind the hope that you are God and you are good. You are God and you are good. With dirt on my face and dust in my lungs, I choose worship. And when my shame has covered my soul, I choose worship. And when my grief has taken my tongue, I choose worship. Oh, I choose worship. As fear grips my chest and the pain tells me to run, I will hold fast to your word. I will stand my ground. I will stand my ground. As I lift my hands, give me strength to keep them raised. You have said you hold me close, and you will not look away. No, you will not look away. With dirt on my face and dust in my lungs, I choose worship. And when my shame has covered my soul, I choose worship. And when my grief has taken my tongue, I choose worship. Oh, with dirt on my face and dust in my lungs, I choose worship. And when my shame has covered my soul, I choose worship. And when my grief has taken my tongue, I choose worship. Oh, I choose worship. I choose worship. I choose to give you praise. I choose worship. I
Thanks, Bailey. Man, you do a great job.
Really, I missed
That's
you
a Bailey
too.
original. That's what
it
you
was.
said.
That
Is
last
that right?
song
She wrote
Bailey
that?
wrote, I Choose Worship by herself.
Oh my goodness.
So we'll have this.
I choose worship by herself. That's not the name of the song.
No.
I
Bailey
can't help
by
it. I
herself
can't help
wrote I Choose
Yeah.
Worship. We will have this link on Facebook. If you want to come back and listen to it, you can just choose it.
Anyway.
She just premiered online.
Premiere.
With the
We should have
worship
put
song.
premiere.
I love it. Thank you, Bailey, for sharing your heart. Such a blessing to see your face. I love all the little pieces that we get to add where people can still kind of jump in. Obviously, we missed Justin this week. We love Justin and Jennifer. We gave them the week off so that they could. They've been working really hard too. Okay, so tonight we were going to do thankfulness actually at the club when we were going to meet in person, but we're switching that up. Next week, since it's the actual Sunday before Thanksgiving, we'll do a segment on thankfulness, and we'll actually have a bunch of little video segments of people sharing what they're thankful for. So if you're one of my leaders, know that I'm coming for you this week.
Coming for you.
To send a video in of what you're thankful for. Go ahead and you can just text those to me now if you'd like. No, just kidding. Stay tuned. We're going to get the lesson going. So we started a series that is just a kind of a thing that Chad coined or made an acronym for, which is PERMS, and it's basically levels or categories of who we are that we need to consider our level of help for. You know, we start and celebrate recovery. We usually come for a specific thing, like I'm here for drugs, alcohol, substance, food, grief, divorce, relationship, codependency, all of the plethora of things we come into CR for. And I've shared before that the journey goes, you know, we come in, we start working on that one thing, but as many of us who have been in CR know, you start unpacking that one thing, and there are just layers and layers and layers. And so for me, I came in, I was angry, I was so full of shame, I was disappointed, going through a divorce, going through criminal proceedings, going through just really had a whole lot of stuff to process and go through and start to just try to sift through who am I and what do I need to work on. Anger was a big one for me at the beginning. And then as I worked with that anger, I got into the sadness, the grief, the loss, the disappointment, the failure, all of that stuff. So at some point you work through those issues you came in for, and God starts going, now that you're here, there's probably some other stuff we need to consider. I know that was for me, my journey. I know for a lot of people too. And so we get this, for me as a ministry leader, I often walk participants through this idea that now that you've gone through a step study, now that you've had some healing in your area of recovery, there's really something else to consider, which is what does it look like to live a healthy life? What does it look like to be a healthy person? It's not just coming in as somebody who would say, I have hurts, habits, and hangups, or I have dysfunction, and fixing the one thing and now it's fine. Now it's, how do I really consider the elements that make somebody healthy or unhealthy, I guess. So Chad, he's going to pull up kind of a little acrostic that explains what we're breaking down over the next 5 weeks, 6 weeks, because next week we'll break it for a second and do a segment on thankfulness.
Yeah.
So the health on 5 levels is the acrostic PERMS. I'll let Chad.
So it's this idea that we kind of, and I really started thinking about this in the order of how we work, kind of emotionally, but like how our brain kind of processes things. And so it kind of prioritizes physical first. So it's like what we feel, our physical being. Now, our physical being is actually connected to our emotional well-being. So they're in almost the exact same spot in your brain. I'm probably saying more than Angela wanted me to. But physically, how are we doing? So our physical body kind of takes priority in our limbic system. Then our emotions, kind of how we interpret that, really come next. So we kind of put labels on how we literally physically feel, and we call those things emotions. So some people would say that even pain is an emotion. So if like I stub my toe, they would call that an emotion. Even in that pain is in the same kind of region where emotion kind of lives. Then relational, right? So we do this, and a lot of times these signals we get, the very first thing that we look to for comfort, for relief, isn't necessarily like, I don't know, something to kind of numb the pain or something. It's actually to people, to relationships. Who do I have that can help me? Who can possibly solve this for me? And then a lot of times we go right, the next thing we do is how do we make sense of it? So it's like then mentally, oh, well, Avery left her toy in the middle of the room, and that's why I kicked it, and that's why my foot hurts, or something like that, right? So then we start to go make sense of it.
I don't know how this just became like a 4-year-old got blamed for something.
I'm just saying, like, we all kind of do these things where it's like we have this pain, whether it's physical or it could be emotional, basically, or like a relational injury, like an emotional threat, and then we put an emotional word to it. It's kind of how we describe it, and then we kind of start to quickly go, how are we doing in the world, like relationally? Who's around us? And then we try to make sense of it. We try to go, okay, then how does this work and how does this play out and what are the steps I should take or who do I blame or how do I stop it from happening again? And then a lot of times I think I would love for spirituality to be more central in this process. But a lot of times that's where I kind of go to this like other side where I'm like, okay, I need to go work on that. Invite God into this or forgiveness or whatever the thing is. But I feel like sometimes that spirituality kind of lands at the end. And I think spirituality could be throughout this, right? Yeah. So it's like, I can turn to God in moments of distress because I think that isn't a relational thing, whether it's physical or emotional pain. But I also need somebody to comfort me. So I added spiritual because I think it's so central to all of this.
Absolutely. Anyway. And I think the spiritual part of it too, I think when we come into something like Celebrate Recovery, where we're really starting to unpack our hurts, our woundedness, the hangups, the places where we've been self-reliant, a lot of times it's hard to lead the conversation with what does your relationship with God look like? Because the answer is most likely not great, or I'm not talking to God, or I have too much shame, or I don't think God sees me, or there's any sort of response that explains that relationship is not in the best place. And the idea for me, I tell people, Celebrate Recovery is a place where we restore the relationship we have with God. And through that, it not only restores us, but the relationships we have with others. But I love, Chad, what you're saying. The manifestation, I want to say, of this idea is if I have a headache or if I don't feel good, if you ever gotten the flu, we were talking about this the other day, that it's flu season's coming up, and we were talking about, we got this like throw up virus a few years ago, and it was wretched.
Norovirus.
Everybody in the house was throwing up.
I think that's what it was.
And you can't, like, when you're physically in pain, it's like nothing else works. You can't, I don't even know how I'm doing emotionally. I'm just out of it.
I'm not even.
If I'm in physical pain, ask me how I'm doing relationally. I'll probably yell at you and tell you to leave me alone.
I have to tell the story, man.
No, we don't have time. We got to keep on going.
I have to. I was at A to Z with Angela's family while she was sick.
A to Z, by the way, not a small group open share group, but like the store you buy
down in Alma, right? And I'm not knocking A to Z. It's not a commercial or it's Slam. Neither one. I like it for what it is. But we're down at A to Z, and I hadn't got sick yet, but everybody else had kind of been sick a little bit. And I
stayed on because I'm
going to
skate
through this, right?
We should not be talking
I end up not skating through it. I'm down at Alma, and I'm shopping with Angela's family, who loves to shop.
They love it there.
Oh my goodness, it's like it is Christmas to them.
Christmas presents for every friend they know from this particular store.
So all of a sudden, I start to feel a little bit of how would I call it? Like a burning or rumbling in my stomach. Maybe lower abdomen.
This is going. Somebody needs to pull the wire. We need to not talk about this.
But I'm somebody who likes to fight off these feelings, right? I'm a withdrawer at heart. I'm kind of shut things down.
We digress.
And I did my very best to shut it down, but sometimes you can't shut stuff down.
He called me an hour away and said, I think I'm going to throw up. And he's like, I think I can hold it together. Now, I don't know anybody who's like, I think I'm going to throw up, but they can hold it for an hour. But he did. He
drove like an hour and a half. We went to another store and then came back. Anyway.
Okay, let us continue. What I'm saying is, the idea is when you're in this order, when you're physically in a bad place, you can't think, how am I doing relationally? It's not how we work. Then if you're emotionally in a bad place, a lot of times the relationships, like if I ask somebody who maybe is still in denial about how they're doing physically or emotionally, they'll think their relationships are fine, but I'll hear somebody who's like, every relationship they have is in conflict. They've been losing jobs. They're just, usually there are signs in a person's life that some of these are just not in a healthy place. And so what we have kind of done with this acrostic has gone, let's consider what healthy looks like. You guys know last week we tackled the physical one, that the reality, hard for us because we both admit in our recovery process that food is something we struggle with. The word struggle there for us, something we're not disciplined in, something that we can lean on for reward, for comfort. And we talked last week about the idea that this is my physical body. It's self-care is important. If I am living a healthy physical life, I'm eating well for fuel, not for comfort or reward. I'm exercising. I'm getting good rest. I'm taking care of myself. I'm doing things like going to the doctor, considering all the health warning signs that might be out there. We talked about some of the, I'm going to say contraindicators, the things that are like drugs, alcohol.
You're welcome for sharing, Shar, by the way.
What?
Go ahead. Nothing. She just said thanks for sharing, Chad.
His vomit
very
stories,
private,
yes.
very private, personal.
So we talked about food, and so this week we're going to talk about or not just food, but how to live a physically healthy life. And honestly, I got quite a bit of feedback this week from several people that it just really kind of hit home, which I love that Celebrate Recovery is a place where when we share, like Chad and I last week said, look, we deal with this. During this COVID season too, we have not been eating healthy. We eat out or we eat junk. We talked about the carb cabinet, which we need to put a lock on.
Man.
And so I appreciate that several of you reached out and said, hey, that resonates with me. That is what like a step study or open share is, when somebody shares and goes, yeah, that is. So we discussed physical. If you missed last week's, go back to the email or go back to Facebook and you can watch last week's teach or lesson and get the physical part of this. So this is part 2, the emotional part of health. I love in the A to Z problem and solution sheet, in the problem side, it says we recognize that a lot of our hurts, habits, and hangups are emotional and spiritual problems that we've never addressed or never realized. So we're going to dive into level 2 of this, what does healthy look like, and discuss emotional health. And so this is a talk Chad and I do a lot actually in the therapeutic side when we help people have kind of an emotional journey and awareness. And so we're just going to kind of break it down into very practical steps of an awareness, not just like a heart check, but like really what is happening for me emotionally. Are you still chuckling about the throw up story?
No, I just nothing. Let's keep moving. I'll tell you later. It's pretty funny, but we don't have time for my antics. I don't know why I have these tonight. These stories come to my mind. I've got a problem, y'all.
Earlier I did this, and he's like, "Are you shooting?"
I think that's a
what
movie
film.
No,
I'm like, I'm reeling you in. He said, "Nobody holds."
Who fishes like this?
Who,
no, but you got to do this. Like you do it with the rod, right? Like you're holding the rod and the reel, right? Do it this way.
We have really gotten that. Okay.
Okay.
Next slide, please. You guys text in and tell us to stay on point. We're all over the place. Okay. 1, being aware that you feel something. This seems like an obvious thing, right? Well, of course, if you feel something, you feel something. That you're being triggered. That something has sent you to a bad place. But we live or we work in the realm of denial, substances that sometimes make you not feel what you feel, doing things like, for me, I can eat something that makes me feel different than what I feel. That's why if I feel like something's out of control, food might make me feel in control. Power cleaning my house might make me kind of, which has a good
sense of control.
The idea is there are some dysfunctional behaviors. The motivation for cleaning my whole house is because I can't control anything and I can't control that. So there's the benefit is now I have a clean house. The reality is cleaning my house isn't going to address what is happening for me emotionally. So we have to be able to go, something is happening emotionally. That is the first step of this process.
Well, I mean, it's easy. It's not easy in some ways, but I think I'm going to use my Alma story because I was like, I'm there and I'm like, I don't want to feel this. So I just kind of shut it down and kind of, force myself to get through it. And I'm like, okay, just shut this down. And if you do that long enough, if you practice that long enough, it's real easy to miss a bunch of your own experience.
Yeah.
Not just the bad, but the good too. If you start to cut it off, if you start to not feel, it's not like you just you don't get a choice when you're numb, you don't get a choice whether or not you feel the good or the bad, right?
You
There's cut it all off.
Memes all over social media about different people and different personality types. And you have people who, they call them empaths, feelers, right? So this is the difference between Chad and I. At one point, I talked to you even last week when we were talking about physical, we also talked about getting good rest. And I was vulnerable and honest and said, I don't sleep well. I toss and turn. I have restless leg. I have to get up in the middle of the night a lot of times. I did a sleep study test trying to figure out why I'm not sleeping well. My heart races in the middle of the night a lot, all that kind of stuff. And so at one point I was laying in bed, Chad is laying there, I'm tossing and turning, and I say to Chad, I wish I had your ability to not feel anything. Like he could be bleeding. Like I'm gonna out you for doing something. When his toenails are long, he doesn't like use clippers. He like rips his toenail off, and that's how he clips his toenails. So he not only rips
I
off
feel the need to show people my toes now. Like
No.
they don't look that bad, you guys. They're not.
his pinky toe especially. So I'll look down and he'll be like bleeding profusely from his pinky toe, and I'm like, if I get a hangnail in my toe, I can't walk, and you have to like bring me tea and cater to me for a week. Like it's bad. I'm there in the sheets, laying there. I can feel the wrinkles, the blanket weight not being right, the temperature in the room. I overfeel everything. So the reason I'm sharing this idea that you have to know you feel something is because really refining it to what is it that I feel emotionally disturbed at this point
I'm like,
is important. And so Chad is
I
saying,
think we're just grossing people out tonight.
Chad is saying he has the ability, and a lot of us do. A lot of us in recovery do,
Yeah.
right? There's these two maybe on a spectrum of can you feel things. I don't feel anything. I have shut my feelings down for so long. I'm not even aware that they exist and I can't acknowledge them. To I feel everything. And that means not only my feelings, but your feelings too. And I'm codependently attached to every feeling in the planet. Like,
Yeah.
that is the broad range of when we say, are you aware that something's happening that you feel? So step one, be aware. We're only to step one. We got to move the show along.
I know. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, why
So
she
then,
stop?
can
we
you
gotta-
specifically label what you feel? I talk to people a lot of times if they have something going on and they'll use words like, I don't feel like I'm enough, or I feel like I'm inadequate. And I'm like, do you know the emotion that is tied to not enoughness and inadequacy? No, I don't know. It's shame. Shame is the emotion that makes you realize or recognize I'm not enough here. I don't. By the way, there is the idea of being ashamed that you did something wrong, but there's also the feeling of inadequacy, the feeling of just the lack of getting it right or feeling like you're not enough, and being able to acknowledge what that feeling is. Sadness, loss, disappointment, frustration, anger. All of these feelings have a specific name, and they're kind of organic to what you want to call them, but if they're labeled out there. So one of two things, either what do you call what you feel, or what is what you feel. Specifically calling it helps you then know what to do next.
The one thing I don't like about labels, like, and I don't mean to knock what you just said.
No, I'm not. I'm
but,
okay.
But I'm like, I don't like the word necessarily like shame, because I'm like, it gets used for everything right now. I feel like so many people talk about shame, and it's like, well, what is shame? And even the people that research shame say that, oh, it's kind of this conglomeration of feelings. So I'm like, I think sometimes people say, oh, I just feel shame, or you're shaming me. And I'm like, okay, which I'm not saying you should. You should not shame your kids. You should not shame your friends or spouse or family, whatever. We shouldn't do that, like as an action, as a verb, right? Like we are shaming. But I'm like, we need to get into shame. We need to say, okay, well, when I did that, when I said this thing to you, or when you felt the way you felt that you call shame, what is it, right? And I think that's with all of these things, being able to label them something and be clear about what that something is, because it works both directions. So we want to label what we feel, so we have to know what we feel very clearly first, so that we can get an accurate label for it. And the reason we label things is to share them, right? That's why we need to put the words to them. But I just think if you come up with, oh, this is my shame showing up, if you're talking to me, I'm going to be like, what do you mean? Like,
I think
help me get
the
that.
idea for me, and I agree with Chad, then we can over-label stuff and it can be used incorrectly. But the idea then is the next slide, which is to understand the meaning we assign to what we're labeling it. And so here's a silly little example as Chad advances the slide.
I'm getting to it, Angela.
The idea that I had a friend and her little daughter was about 3 or 4, and she had been sitting crisscross applesauce. Her little legs had been crossed for probably like 30 minutes. And when she stood up, she pulled her shoe off and she said, something's biting me all over my leg, something's biting me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I looked at her leg and there's nothing. And she's like, it's all over. And I was like, her foot's asleep. She had sat on her foot, it fell asleep, and the tingling feeling that it was coming back awake. And so I'm trying to explain this to her, but in her mind, that was a new feeling for her.
No, that's definitely
That is not
bugs.
inviting me.
That is definitely bugs.
And
Yeah.
so I was kind of processing with her that your foot fell asleep, and this was it waking back up. And so, trying to help her label a new feeling. A lot of times we can go, this is anger, I'm angry. And when we really dig under it, you're really sad. And because you're helpless about the sadness, now you're frustrated. But deeper under there is actually helplessness
Yep.
and sad. And so this is why it's important to have a healthy awareness of what you actually feel, that you feel something, what you feel,
Yeah.
and then the meaning you assign to that. And this is what, for me, like the idea of shame. If I say I'm feeling inadequate or I'm feeling not enough, and I say, I think I'm kind of having a shame trigger. I'm feeling like I'm just not
Yeah.
enough. Because when I feel like I'm not enough, or when for me, it could be, I'm going to say, you mentioned a shame researcher, Brene Brown. I
Yeah.
read a lot of her stuff, and she calls them shame gremlins. The voice inside my head when I put myself out there, or like I shared my testimony Tuesday night at a Celebrate Recovery in Branson. We talked about they had their 5-year anniversary, and they were Scott and Barb, who came to our Celebrate Recovery, went through our program, then moved to Branson, launched theirs, and I was excited to be able to share my testimony with them. But there I am in Branson, 35 people that I've never met before, a few of them from the town where I had my moral failure, and I started panicking, and I started having the idea that this is going to backfire. My story is going to be used against me. I shouldn't be here. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. I don't have a good story. There are times when I share, and I know on the outside, a lot of people see me and go, oh, she's confident, she's articulate, she can share. And I don't want to miss sharing that I also have the same feelings that a lot of people have that are afraid to share, or once you share, feel immediately like, why did you share? You shouldn't do that. On Sunday nights, oftentimes Chad and I will have this discussion like, nobody wants to see us online. There are better options. Whatever the things are.
Although we are getting better at
it. We're quite entertaining. We get
anyway.
that. The idea there
Talk
for me
about
is
throw up.
then I start, well, I'll try harder. I'll do more. I'll make sure the words are better. I'll make sure I look okay. It's almost like I kind of do this hustle thing to try to make myself worth it instead of what I did, which I've learned. There I was Tuesday night, starting to feel inadequate, starting to feel not enough. And I immediately was like, God, I'm here. When I got asked to share my testimony at this particular spot, I felt like you said yes. I drove here. You're with me. I'm just releasing those inadequate feelings. Please bless the people who are here. And I shared it. And obviously in a very CR fashion, there were people there that were blessed by it. It blessed me to share it. But a lot of times if we don't know that we're feeling something, what we're feeling, and then the next slide,
Okay, I can go to the next one.
which is what our behavior is in correspondence to that feeling. So for me, what I just explained to you was when I feel that not enoughness, I start to do more. I start to have extra energy that's over and above normal Angela energy, which is a lot anyway. And so I'm able to then kind of reel in Chad's way, reel that in this way.
I think it's more of like a wrist
It's
thing.
not natural for me. I'm not a
Okay.
Fisher person, so
Fisher person.
I usually would
like that you
just
said
like
Fisher person.
enjoy the sun on the boat while my dad fished. But what we're saying there is then be mindful of the behavior of choices that you make in response to the feeling that's assigned. And so when I'm talking to somebody who, let's say, has triggers to look at pornography, wants to go drink or use substances, wants to call up old relationships that were unhealthy, wants to, I call it the codependent deal, wants to run everyone else's life instead of releasing it. When I talk through their tendency to do those things with them, a lot of times I'll say, right before that tendency showed up, what was happening for you?
Sorry.
What is it that is was there, and now the response to it is I want to drink, or the response is I want to use, or the response is I want to manage someone else's life, or the response is, for me, the love and relationship girl that I was for so long, when I was feeling insecure and unlovable, my thought was I would call someone, or I'd, try to get into another relationship, and that somehow that relationship would make me feel more loved or adequate. It doesn't work like that. Or if I was feeling like I wasn't getting it right and I didn't want to feel this anymore, if I drank or made another choice, I wouldn't have to feel this. And so part of this emotional health is recognizing some of the self-reliant things we do to feel different. And if we can back up from that to what we originally felt and what meaning we assign to that feeling, we can actually get somewhere in our emotional journey.
It's so good.
Our emotional journey.
So emotionally good.
What else do you want to add to that?
I don't know. I was thinking about 3 or 4 things, but you were on a roll, so I just let you go. It was good.
He tuned it out, though. He wasn't really listening.
Man, I was thinking about this, and I'm like, I kind of go through it, and I'm like, this all happens so fast.
Yeah, it does.
Y'all. I mean, we're saying, hey, pay attention to this, but it's like it can happen in like less than a second, probably for me. Like I can literally like feel some sense of pain or shame or loss or sadness or whatever the thing is, or even stub my toe. I can almost immediately kind of label that, oh, this sucks, this hurts, right? So I just called it hurt, and then I'm like on to my next thing, which is, okay, well, what do I do with that, right? Like I don't even spend much time understanding the experience, or kind of, I go right to meaning and fixing and avoiding the pain altogether. So we're going to talk about that in a second, but I'm kind of the opposite side of that. Like you're saying, hey, I go manage and do all this, and I'm like, I kind of dismiss all this, and I just kind of keep moving forward and try to keep the ship moving in the right direction, so to speak. So it's really tough to take the time to go, okay, I'm gonna examine this behavior that I have. And it's hard to work back. I mean, it really is hard to work back.
As humans, we self-reliantly power through a lot of our emotion and don't address it, and don't. Maybe that's too, because I know for us, as we've been on this emotional journey, the idea is then who responded to our emotions in a good way. A lot of us, if we had healthy emotional responses in our upbringing, our childhood, families of origin, that kind of stuff, we would be in a different place. And so that, again, that's not to blame. I mean, my parents didn't have parents who emotionally responded to them. And so this is just like this awareness goes back, a lack of awareness goes back for lots of generations. And a lot of self-reliant patterns are what I saw more than emotional health. So the next one, the idea, and we talked a little bit about this, and we will each week kind of talk about what unhealthy looks like. And so, and we've addressed it tonight a little bit, but unhealthy in emotional categories looks like no awareness, emotions shut down, or you're unaware that your emotions are running wide open, or that you're being hijacked by your emotions and you don't recognize that our emotions are actually running your life.
Yeah.
Either way, on either side of this, the shutdown or the overdrive, there's still an emotional and spiritual, which we'll get to later, but an emotional root there that if we don't have awareness of, it really is hijacking us. And so the idea is, how do we have a better awareness of what is happening for us emotionally, so that we can invite God in, so that we can invite a healthy, safe other, whether it's a healthy spouse or a step steady accountability partner, or a sponsor, somebody, or a therapist, somebody that's healthy to be on our emotional journey, so we can get the response we need to in those emotional places and be emotionally healthy. I know this is it's a hard topic, because I think the reality is, for so many of us, me included, our hurts, habits, and hangups, we didn't get the emotional responses we needed. And so it's dangerous for us to risk putting our emotions out there with fear they won't be responded to, or they might be responded to negatively. There have been times I bring emotion to the table and I get actually blamed for having the hurt, or blamed for having that emotional feeling instead of responded to. And so there are lots of ways this can go bad, which is the good reasons why our body says, don't address this, don't go into this, avoid it, power through it, outwork it, all of those things. And so that's what unhealth looks like in this emotional capacity. And then what are the last one? We kind of, I made the slide because we talked about it, but emotional limitations. Where would you say somebody could like get to and then they would be blocked or maybe have to do a little bit more digging? I was thinking like maybe trauma. This might be a little harder to just on your own. If I say start an emotional journey, be emotionally aware, start to label it, there might be some things that are triggering you beyond a workable realm that you need further work. Is maybe what I'm thinking?
Well, I'm listening to you and I'm kind of going, I don't really want to say it the way I want to say it. So let me think for a second. Okay.
Say what you mean to say, Chad.
I will.
Say what you
I
mean
will.
to say. Just sorry, go ahead.
So for me, I'm thinking we have good reasons why we're blocked or why we're stuck or why we have limitations. So a lot of times it's not like we develop these unhealthy patterns that we all have, you guys. So these patterns of shut down or run wide open, we didn't develop those out of nowhere. They came from somewhere and they had good reason to show up. Now, a lot of times if we try to push back into those places, we'll run into things that we don't necessarily like or that we don't know what to do with. And if you don't have safety in a community, if you don't have safety in recovery or a relationship, or if you don't have people around you that can handle, and by that I mean not because you're too much or too little, but the people that can embrace kind of who you are.
Not make it about them when you bring your hard emotion to them.
If you don't have that around you, there's a huge limitation. There's a good reason why you would either hold it back, or you would overcompensate and show much more emotion than maybe is necessary for certain situations. So it's not
to try to get that response, that too muchness. Yeah. I feel that a lot.
It's not a the limitations here are actually safety strategies, like survival strategies that we've developed to say, hey, I'm going to find a way to kind of be okay and to fight my way through this. So we do these things that really do end up limiting our access to ourselves. Yeah. I mean, that's the saddest part of this, Ange, is it's not that people are like limited in how the rest of the world or life, it ends up limiting ourselves and our ability, and that's kind of what I was saying in that first one.
Not knowing who I really am.
It's our ability to experience the world, right? If we don't know ourselves, if we've cut parts of ourselves off, so to speak, we can't experience the joy of relationship. However, it does protect us from the pain of relationship. Yeah. And so you kind of have to make this choice that says, I'm going to choose to live in a healthy way, to live in a non-addicted way, and find my comfort, get my needs met in community, in relationship, versus the way that a lot of times people who struggle with addiction have, which is, going to a substance or going to a thing or managing a relationship with lots of emotion and energy, like Angela was talking about. Like we find our validation in the outside, or we find our validation in being able to shut it all down. Yeah. So, I mean, those are my thoughts on it real quick.
So that's our talk tonight on emotion. Obviously, we have a lot to say on all of these, which is why we were a little bit long last week too. And so I just want to say, here's the hope in this process. In Celebrate Recovery, you're in a community where other people are also learning how to be empathic, how to respond, how to listen to you, how to share their own self. And so I would encourage you, if you don't have an accountability partner or team, you don't have a sponsor, if you've never been through a step study, or maybe you've been through one, but it's time to go another layer in, join a step study. There's a lot of them in the Northwest Arkansas area. And if you're outside of the area, I know we have quite a few viewers who watch from Florida, from Kansas, from other places. So if that's you, maybe find a step study that you can get into. There have even been some online Zoom step studies. So I would encourage trying to get into a group where you can process it. Possibly getting in with a therapist or another safe other. I love when relationships in Celebrate Recovery are formed because it's two people that understand the guideline language and you can share free of being fixed, but just being heard and responded to. We really encourage that. So right now we're going to kick it back over.
Just to be clear, we don't encourage coming to Celebrate Recovery to find a relationship though.
No. Relationships are built at Celebrate Recovery.
Oh, when you have a relationship that comes to CR. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't help but make the jokes.
We're going to kick it back over to Worship by the Bay. That's what we're going to call it.
Worship by the Bay.
And if you have listened to this message or even have kind of been, meditating on last week's idea on food, and now we're hitting emotion and you're starting, I keep saying food, but that wasn't it. It was physical altogether. But the idea that you're starting to go, I recognize I want to be healthy. I want to be a healthy person. I want these categories to be healthy. And I'm ready to kind of surrender some of the things I've relied on myself for and step into this maybe scarier but deeper place. We would encourage you, take a blue chip. Let us know if you want us to celebrate with you. We have mailed quite a few blue chips out this summer.
Yep.
So you can send us your address in our message box, and we can put, if you're in the United States, we can mail a blue chip to you.
For sure.
We would love to do that. So let's kick it back over. We'll do a wrap up worship song, end with the serenity prayer, and then close out for the night. Here's Bailey.
Here we go.
I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Lord, now indeed I find thy power and thine alone can change the leper's spots and melt the heart of stone. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. And when before the throne I stand in him complete, Jesus died my soul to save. My lips shall still repeat, Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. He washed it white as snow. He washed it white as snow.
Hi there, I'm a grateful believer and I struggle with depression and anxiety. And my name's Megan. I'm going to lead you in this serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.
All
That's
right.
it for tonight.
stuff, man.
Megan,
Yep.
our dear sweet participant of our CR, who we have loved well.
Always
she sent
does
us
a great
that
job.
from Arizona. She has moved to Arizona, but she's still a part of our Forever family. It was great to see her face tonight, too. Thank you so much, Bailey, for doing worship tonight. And we look forward to seeing you right here next Sunday and every Sunday at 6. Thanks so much for being with us.
Y'all, we appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. And it's good to hang out with y'all, even though it's kind of virtual and all the weirdness of Facebook and everything else. But I love to see the comments. I love to see you guys saying stuff. So have a good night. We'll leave you alone. I'll get off of here. I won't tell you any more stories. Have a good night.